patches and showers early Friday.
Welcome to Project DIY Mold, where I am going to be using this kit to make my own silicone molds. Stick around.
Day one of Project DIY Molds was to, of course, get our beautiful models done and sculpted. So here I'm just using air dry clay. I have a little bit of a template I'm following, creating the Specs Perch. Here you can see me kind of smoothing it out, but essentially this will end up being a badge where we put your unused glasses on when you don't need them. So I'm just smoothing it down with some water, using my sculpting tools and making sure it's nice and smooth. We are creating a model of a worry stone here, and again making sure that it is perfectly sculpted, smoothed out, so that it has the best opportunity to create a really good mold. I sculpted a couple of different versions of each model, but not all of them made the cut. Day two of Project DIY Molds was all about taking our air dry clay that is now dry and sanding it down to ensure the smoothest surface possible. The next important step was to give every piece a good seal with that Liquitex gloss varnish. This would ensure that when we resin these pieces, they won't be porous. And after they are dry, they need a quick little scuff up before we get onto the resining process. The idea and the goal is to ensure that each piece is going to end up being as smooth as possible, because the smoother it is in real life, the smoother our molds will become, which means that whatever we cast in those molds will then also be smooth. And with that smoothness comes that beautiful resin glossy shine that we want to replicate every single time we pour a mold. Day three saw us needing to rehash the resin process, this time using UV. I really didn't like the way that the small pour had set on the pieces. It wasn't smooth, it was still quite lumpy. I couldn't quite get the flow, particularly in these worry stones. So I decided to give it a go with UV resin here. It was really tricky to do the sides. We had to make sure that, again, every single facet of every single piece is nice and smooth so that our molds will then be also nice and smooth. So it took a while, but we finally got there, carefully adding layers and layers and building up the UV resin and curing it on the spot and making sure that everything was nice and smooth. All in all, I think each piece got about 2 or 3 dome coats before I was completely satisfied that everything was nice and smooth. And even then, the worry stones just weren't playing the game. So I had to actually peel off the resin and start all over again, really, really carefully, bit by bit on these worry stones, because I wanted to preserve the contour of that actual depression. After about the 4th or 5th go over with UV resin, I was starting to lose hope. I honestly put it aside for a good hour or so, and then as a last ditch effort was like, nah, I'll give it a sand down and see where we land with that. So I took some 1200 grit sandpaper to it and then decided I was going to give it a good old coat of crystal clear gloss. Turns out that that coat of clear gloss was so good that every piece got the same treatment. Day 4 was all about actually pouring the silicone. So here I am just placing some double-sided tape on the backs of all of the pieces that we are going to be molding today. And this is just to stick them down onto the bottom of that mold holder, that circular lid there, so that they don't float up when we actually pour the silicone. Now the silicone is 2 parts. It's a 1-to-1 ratio situation. You measure them out, you pour it in, you mix it around. I mixed mine for about 5 minutes, made sure to mix it really, really well. I really like this mixture because it really wasn't allowing for any air bubbles in it. Then you just sort of pour it in, make sure everything's nice and covered. I had to actually mix up another batch just to cover up. You can see the white bits just poking out there. And then we wait. Now the silicone was generally ready after the 6th hour, but I left it an extra hour just to be sure. I had to wrestle with the lid a little bit here and try and get the edges off, but we got there in the end. And guys, when I tell you my heart was in my throat the whole time until about this point here where I found out that they actually molded quite well. So we just gently coaxed them out of the mold. I had to use a Stanley knife here to just cut the bottom part of the Specs Perches out because they were sort of covered in the silicone on the bottom there. And so that came out really easily once I did that, and then just pushed out that middle hole. And just repeated the same process for the other little guy on the other side. The silicone mold was actually looking semi-reasonable. All it needed was just a trim with some really sharp scissors just to peel off the kind of janky bits from that silicone mold process. All in all, we were able to hand sculpt our models and then cast them in silicone mix to create actual silicone molds to cast resin in. Well, we definitely succeeded in making the molds, but are they any good? So, on to day 5, which saw me make some actual resin pieces from our beautiful resin molds. To make sure I gave the mold a really good road test, I used both UV resin as well as 2-part epoxy resin. So the first one I did was UV, and you can see me here just experimenting with a few different layers of UV resin with some alcohol ink, curing in between each layer. And now we are going on to our resin, the 2-part resin. This is just a small pour kit, so it's a 1-to-1 resin. I'm using some black obsidian, and we are going to start with the worry stone. So I've put a little layer of resin down. I'm laying down some smaller smaller flat stones of the obsidian just inside that worry stone there. A little bit of black glitter in it as well, just to kind of make things sparkle a little bit and give a little bit of dimension, I think. The last glasses perch that you see there is also done in 2-part resin. The mold definitely held the resin in it without leaking or dripping or anything like that. So far so good. And now for the moment of truth, the demold. They all came out of the mold easily. However, unfortunately, every single edge was janky as hell. And this is because when I trimmed the mold, I trimmed it janky. So I'm going to have to go back through and straighten up those edges on the mold itself. Otherwise, every single piece will always come out janky. The actual impression finishes there. And then I've gone and topped up the mold too far and it's poured thicker. I'm going to just use some UV resin, and we are going to just essentially fill in these gaps and cure them, give it another good sand down and possibly a spray clear coat, and I think it should come up okay.
Well guys, it is time for the reveal. And here are our finished products. Are they 100% perfect? Absolutely not, but I learned so much, and let's get into that right now. Let's start with our Specs Perches. These guys started life as a little template, which I used to then carve out and sculpt the air dry clay models. I sculpted this guy, also out of air dry clay. Just kind of free-handed this shape, free-handed this depression, just made sure again that it was smooth as possible. So that's his little model, and that's the replica. The process for pouring the silicone mold, the kit, was absolutely easy. What I did learn was to fasten whatever you are molding or making a mold of really well down to the bottom of the container or the tray that you're using. That will ensure that when you finish, the only open part will be the part that was attached to the bottom of the container that you're using, and you won't end up with overflow like I did, where I had to kind of cut through and then trim it. Now, the jagged edges on this presented another problem. So what ended up happening was when I did the pour and filled it too far up, the edges of my resin piece were also jagged, so I needed to do a lot of fixing to it. I know now that not to pour as deeply, essentially. So just to pour essentially how thick the mold was, and not any further than that. So you can actually kind of see the lip of where to pour to, and that is kind of like a couple of mil below the surface. This hole, I couldn't fit any fittings in there, so I had to change tack and actually use a screw little eyelet here, and then fill in this. So this will be something that I'll fix in the mold later on. When I go to do this pour again, I'll fix that up. I'll chop out that little thing and make it just a screw situation. So overall, would I do this again? Yes, absolutely I would. And now that I've learned a lot more about the process and what to not do, I feel like next time I do it, it will be a lot better. And I might even recast these more properly to avoid the whole jagged edge situation. But I'm feeling a lot more comfortable to do that now.
Oh, 1 mile in fog patches and showers early Friday, but improving to greater than 6 miles on Friday morning.
Stars shining bright above me. Night breezes seem to whisper.
If you have stuck around this far, thank you so much for experimenting with me, and I'll see you in the next one.
Little dreamer.
They work.